What's up, Squadron? Aviation has given me a ton of amazing experiences.
Good job there. Nice rock, high wing.
But more importantly, it's introduced me to a whole new family of friends.
Like, dude, you're killing it. You're having a great day.
So just never give up.
Airport, and then, oh, by the way, I got carb ice while I was flying through, so the engine started running rough. And I had to
Join us tonight as we're cleared direct for some hangar flying. I am Bryon Bowman, and this is SuperAero Live.
That's a lot. I mean, a lot of cookies.
What's up, avgeeks? It's Wednesday, which can only mean one thing. It's time for another episode of SuperAero Live, and I'm coming in hot on the mic because I moved it, and you guys were getting blown out. Sorry about your ear holes there. Anyway, it's Wednesday, SuperAero Live. So excited to have you. And also, wanted to give a little shout-out to our guest last week. We had Kevin on, Mr. Stoll Pilot himself, and he is tearing it up down at Reno right now with the Stoll Drags at Reno. I hope you're checking out that coverage that's happening right now. Really exciting to see what's happening. They've been doing all this also, like this ballet stuff with all the tail draggers where they get them all lined up and then they like do a pirouette together. I didn't know that like dancing was part of it too. I like it. That's not a mean joke. I think it's actually pretty cool. Anyway, so that's all happening. If you haven't checked out that episode, go check it out after tonight's awesome episode. Kind of fanboying over here a little bit about tonight's guest, but before we introduce him, I want to talk to you all at home. James Hyatt, so great to have you. Freedom Fixers here. Jonathan McCormick, you finally made it to a live instead of a replay. Jonathan, nice. Red Baron Modeling's here. 72 Papa's here. He just took an epic flight I saw on Instagram. Let's see. Oh, you guys were talking early. You were talking early. Gary Smith is here. Yeah, the gang is all here. Canyon K. Great to have you, Canyon. So excited. Hey, everyone, if you haven't done so already, make sure to go share the episode, like, and subscribe. A lot of people still aren't subscribed. We're like crawling slowly, spreading the gospel that is SuperAero. Little known fact, I am a pastor in the Universal Life Church because I had to marry someone, perform a marriage, whatever. Anyway, let's stop goofing around. I want to introduce tonight's guest. Back when I was a wee young pilot, I found a podcast with this guy on it, and it taught me so much, and so I'm really excited to have him on the show. Al Waterloo is here. There he is.
What's happening? All right, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Dude, I am so excited to have you on the show. We were talking a little bit just beforehand. Back in the day, you had Simple Flight. You run the Simple Flight podcast. Is that right?
It was like, first of all, I'm super impressed by what your setup is, technology-wise, platform-wise, because our little modest Simple Flight radio was a little mixing board that I got on eBay and a cheap microphone, and that thing finally blew out in the middle of one of our live episodes, and we sounded like Alvin and the Chickmunks. So mad props to you for what you've created here. And Simple Flight was a fun podcast that's still in existence today, but I stepped back. My very first episode was in 2012, the night before Oshkosh started, and I was at the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel, and I was like, hey, we're going to start a podcast. And easier said than done, because the first episode I go live just like something like this, and I was gonna go for 2 hours straight, and it was by myself. I thought I had everything in the world to talk about, and I ran out of stuff to talk about in exactly 3 minutes. And now we had an hour and 57 minutes to kill. So that was the how Simple Flight was sort of born, and that's where I brought in a co-host, Mark Eppner. And he was such a lifesaver just to have somebody to talk to. So the Simple Flight is an awesome thing. You should check it out.
Yeah, I will say, like, what was fascinating me about that one is at the time in my life when I was in my training. This is a long time ago now, but awesome. I was driving so much to the airport. Like, the airport was an hour away, and so it was great because I could just like pop on Simple Flight, like get in the zone. And then you guys are talking about like I was flying J3 Cubs, and you guys are like flying Cirrus. We're gonna talk about Cirrus later. You're like flying those, like doing like, you're like, oh yeah, we had ice on like short final the midway or whatever, or Palwaki or whatever. And it's like wow, it's like real. That's like real flying, and I'm just like, like, anyway. Excuse me.
I would argue that flying a Cub is real flying. It was funny because it's we got a lot of emails around, the show would run live every Sunday night, very much this timeline, like 8:30 in the evening Central Time, went till like 9 at night, 9:30 at night. And if we didn't post the episode by Monday morning for all the podcasters that were in their commute, we'd literally get like hate mail from people saying like, man, you ruined my commute to work or to the airport. And it was fun, but it was really cool to talk about real world flying and just sort of like the school of hard knocks. And it was back in that era of podcasting, and all this content stuff was starting to come out, and it was just fun to talk about. That's really what it was all about.
No, you guys did some epic hangar flying on that show, and hopefully we'll be able to do the same tonight. I want to some folks are trickling in. There might be people that I've not met before. Oh, I think Dustin Noblo's here. I know that guy. He makes a mean burger. Scarface is here. I think Scarface joined us last week. Jeff Bingham is here from Australia. What?
Whoa.
Nice. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Welcome, everybody. So let's start. Like, I want to start at the beginning a little bit, right? Like, and I know some of this from being like the fanboy I am, but like, could you take us through a little bit of like I always talk about on this show, like the origin story, like, how did you get your superpowers? Like when, take me through becoming a pilot, what your experience like that was for that.
Well, that's a great question. I get that a lot, and people ask that question, and I would say that I'm the ugly duckling in my family. There's nobody in my family that was no one's a pilot, even grandparents, uncles, cousins, no one's a pilot in my family. So my dad's an engineer. My mom's been a full-time like painter artist since I can remember. My sister's an architect. And then here I am, just a pilot within the family. But there was one rule in our family that we could do or live by, and I just remember, and that rule was you could do whatever you want with your own money. And I just remember that ever since I was a little kid, all I could think about is airplanes. I'd write about them in school for like a writing class. I'd draw about them in art class, the whole thing. And I saved up all my lawn mowing money and all that to try to get my license. And I live in Chicago, but my grandparents, they had retired from Chicago to Arkansas. And I'll never forget, in high school, between my junior and senior year of high school, I tell my parents at the dinner table, like, I'm going to go take flying lessons, and, I need a ride to Arkansas because that's where I'm going to go learn. I priced it all out. And they said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go get my pilot's license. And they said, nope, no, you're not going to do that. But you could do whatever you want in my family with your own money. And they held out that. And that was history. That was about 20 years ago now.
I muted myself. See, I'm still learning. That's awesome. I might have to adopt that with my kids, because it's like the idea of like, that's real incentive, right? It's like, you can do whatever you want with your own money, you save up, you learn personal responsibility, you get to do all that stuff. That's really cool. So it was fun. After you went and did the training, you had not that you're not a professional pilot now in what you do, but you were going like more traditional track. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. So, I at the time in the early, it was 2003, I went to the University of Illinois, and they had an awesome aviation program, and it's still sort of in existence through, they call Parkland College. But it was a lot of fun, being, learning down there, going through their Institute of Aviation program. And what right out of college, I ended up joining Republic Airlines, and I flew for them for a little while. And just for me personally, it was kind of funny. I showed my mom my W-2 page, like pay stub at the end of my first year, and it was like $19,000 that we made. And literally on the accounting code that the airline used to pay out officers was, they didn't say first officer pay or anything. They said that this was non-skilled unionized hourly labor, and that's how you were paid as a pilot. And for me, that was that's sort of how the job felt. I loved the flying, but the rest of the components to that, after 5 years, it just sort of, it wasn't really what I was like getting out of with flying. And my mom was also, sort of mad at me. She's like, hey, we paid for all this flight school lessons and all that, but you joined the Teamsters union, so that was a big part of it. But you had to join the pilot union, and we're so happy the Teamsters. So the flying was awesome. I learned so much, and that's sort of what opened my eyes. Without that, airline flying wouldn't be where I am today. And I highly recommend trying that path and going down it. There's people that really love it, and it's a really important thing to do. And flying for the airlines, it's only getting busier out there with that. So it's an awesome career. But for me, it just didn't feel like that was the right path, or it could make a bigger impact. So ended up switching and to a corporate gig, but I had a lot of time off. And during that, I would fly for a week, and then you had a week off. And this is where simple flight started. I had to figure out something to do, during that week off. The first Monday, that I had off during my week of non-flying, I stayed home, watched Oprah, The Price is Right, and Days of Our Lives. And I'm like, man, I got to do something different. And that's where Simple Flight came out of, and started giving some flying lessons at the airport, at the Chicago Executive Airport. And that was, I found a lot of meaning in that, being able to teach people how to fly in the real world. Because I don't know if you tell me if you've ever felt this in your flying, but there's all, I was the CFI before joining the airlines, worked my way up to gain experience to leave instructing and go to the airlines. But when I came back outside of that, that was a huge deal. You fly with a lot of customers or students that were trying to get their license, but then they were stuck and they kept starting over because the CFI had moved on. And that was, I had a lot of empathy for these people. And with the airline flying and this corporate flying, you learn how to travel and go places. And that was the real excitement. So a lot of the flying lessons were structured around, hey, let's go, tell me where you want to go. And I'll never forget the first student I had, we flew to Phoenix, Arizona and back. And we took a whole week and did their instrument rating and flew all the way out there and all the way back in their own airplane. And that was sort of where I fell in love with teaching and showing people how to travel and do cool things with airplanes. And that's where a lot of the Simple Flight stories came from too.
And that's actually something that you mentioned, like you were talking a little bit like, what's missing from your flying or whatever. That's something I was just talking to a friend of mine about. Actually, not today, but we snuck. This is what everyone needs friends like this. One of my friends, flying friends, was like, "Hey, what are you doing over lunch today?" Because he's like, are you still current? And I was like, almost not. And he's like, you and I are going flying today over lunch. And like we got on the plane, flew like literally 15 minutes to another airport, got a landing in, came back, like cranked it out, right? And that's really great. But he and I were talking about just that sort of stuff. And I think there becomes a point in your when I feel like most people have had this experience, to your point, where like you start to get to a point where you're like, well, like what am I going to do with this now? And so having that, and then separately, like you've got this, for me, I've got this like little, circle of confidence that is like widening out on the map. And I'm like, all right, I've gone this far. It's like, well, could I go that far next time? And so that when you were talking about on the podcast about that type of training where you're just like, hey, guess what? We're going to go to California. or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
let's go.
Like that's super magical stuff. So, and speaking,
That stuff.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, that stuff is fun. That's like I think there's there's very few of us, including myself, that if we wanted to get a pilot's license for something greater than just the sake of saying that we got a pilot's license. We wanted to do something cool with it. And when we sit down and start to think about like, hey, where do we want to go? How do we want to go and travel and use this license? That's a much different way of training and a philosophy of thinking than how do we get a license? Let's learn how to use aviation versus actually get a pilot's license. And when you start to think about it, like things like, okay, how do I land and order fuel at an FBO? How do I ask for a crew car? How do I pump my own fuel at a self-serve fuel station? How do I divert? How do I, all these little things. And you start to see that, like you said, I love your little confidence ring as that starts to go. I'm going to borrow that from you if you don't mind.
You can have that one for free.
Awesome. Thank you. That's so I'll patent that as Ryan. So, but that literally is like, you're right. This confidence bubble. How do you expand that so that way, when you do get your license, that you can just hit the ground running? Why not travel somewhere cool to Florida or to California or New York or Bahamas, and you have that confidence right out of the gate. That's how you want to feel. So let's train that way.
And some of that, I mean, it feels like some of that is airframe limited, right? Like I feel like people who are training in the, like a J3 ride to Florida is going to take like a month. Not actually. Right. But a long time. But like, people are training in Cirrus or Diamond or, the faster like training aircraft could do that. That's like a real thing you could do.
You absolutely can do that. And, there's, even if you were to say train in a J3 or a Piper Husky or a 172, there's some really neat things that you can do with those. So figuring out, like, you're right, the airframe, what the sweet spot is of that. But you can really develop those skills and that confidence and really expand that confidence bubble. So that way, when you do, let's say, learn in a J3 Cub, you could certainly fly it to Florida, but you can also fly it to some incredible grass strips and like have some cool adventures. So let's start developing that adventure and that creativity while you're learning to fly.
Really funny thing just popped in the chat. Eric Johnston, aviation photographer extraordinaire, is in the chat, and he said when you were talking about like the crew car stuff, he said, by the way, fastest car in the world is a crew car.
Yes, true statement.
That is accurate.
A little sidebar story. I was on one of these training trips with a customer, and we found this examiner in Wilbarger, Texas, which is sort of like in the Texas Panhandle.
Okay.
It was like hotter than all get out. It was 110 degrees, and this little country airport. And we looked at FBO manager said, "Hey, feel free to take whatever car you want." And there's literally 4 Crown Victorias. Like, that's like sort of the ultimate gold crew car, I feel like. The old police car, the Crown Vic. And these were like unmarked cars. So they weren't like the white and black ones. They were like the light blue or the champagne, like gray and all that. But they had the hoods open as if like some police cars do, is they're sitting there idling and they need to cool. So all with these hoods that are idling, and it's like that was a spectacular moment of your choice of crew car of old Crown Vic. So that was just totally awesome.
I love that. I feel like in Wisconsin, and I know you've flown in Wisconsin a lot, so I'm based out of Timmerman Airport, and I feel like in Wisconsin we have a lot of like Astro vans.
Yes.
I don't know
that
why.
Seems weird, doesn't it? Like I think like the only remaining Astro vans in this world are Wisconsin crew cars.
It's like Ephraim up in Door County, like up on the peninsula up there. They've got like a Astro van that is like literally, like it smells like the 70s in there.
It smells like the 70s, like, and I love the thing where it says like fuel injection on the side. It's like the cutting edge technology of the day. That was like,
right.
That's special, really special. So good.
So I mean, you sent me a ton of photos, and I have some of them here. I don't think I have them probably in like the correct order. Oh, is that actually playing the audio? What did I do? If it is playing the audio, sorry about that. Here we go. Because no one's gonna be able to hear you over that. There we go. This is what I wanted to show though. Like, check out. Like, that's a place you went.
It was amazing. So this was, sort of kind of wrapping the idea around of like, one of the things that I personally love is doing big things with small airplanes. And
Sure.
this summer we had an opportunity to go with 4 people from Chicago and 1 from Wisconsin. And we flew all the way to Juneau, Alaska and back in Cirrus's. And these are all Cirrus owners that I've come to know and really enjoy their company, and these owners got to know each other and develop an incredible community. And we took a trip to Juneau, Alaska and back, and there's 2 guys on the trip that literally just got their license. One of them got their license 1 week prior to going on this trip, and the other got their license the night before leaving on the trip. And
wait, what?
Yes,
Sorry.
that was. It was awesome. So like I love telling this story because literally 72 hours later, this is the view of when we left Chicago and we're up here in Alaska just flying around. And this was just the start of it. We're kind of we flew VFR all the way to Canada and back, to Alaska and back. And it was really cool. A lot of people, as I tell the story and share pictures as we along this, people are like, oh, I had to file a lot of flight plans and do this and do that. And, it was cloudy. But at the end of the day, we flew 100% of the flying was VFR. And we had such a great time working our way up there. And we were joking. There's a few other pictures later on that, hey, here we are, sort of low level, 1,000 feet above the ground, working through these fjords. We're all flying with each other. And I was joking. I'm like, hey, we should take a picture of you guys that just got your license and send it to the DPE and say, hey, thanks for my license. It'd be shocked to see that you're flying, you just got your license 72 hours ago, and here you are, VFR flying through these fjords, looking for glaciers and all that. So pretty cool.
Super, super cool. And I'm going to put a video up here. Here we go. Let's see if that works. It didn't work. Where's my video of you doing cool guy stuff? Here it is. Yeah, is this the same trip?
This is the same trip. That was the previous picture was taken maybe like 20 minutes earlier from filming this. And this was unbelievable. Literally the coolest thing I've ever done in an airplane. And hopefully, you guys, whoever's listening or watching, it's like, you go do cool things with airplanes. No matter what it is, it should be absolutely awesome. And it's taken me 20 years to do this and fly a trip like this. And I'm like, man, I should have done this way sooner. And it was unbelievable to be able to do a trip, and it was a lot more approachable than I thought. And here we are. We're literally like 500 feet above glaciers. And the cool thing is we start. You can see we kind of around that video. We flew up the fjord, we've run into this glacier, and then we start following the glacier up. So you're slowly doing this climb from sea level and staying 500 feet above the glacier, and you're climbing all the way up to 10,000 feet. And it literally felt like you were sledding with friends. There were 5 airplanes with us doing this, and these going through these fjords and these glacier fields. It was unbelievably epic.
It is super, I mean, kind of like just awestruck. It's so beautiful, like just, and separately just like pretty epic. Freedom Fixer Flying says, seriously? You've never heard that joke
That's
before.
Awesome.
Yes. But that's just amazing. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, obviously this is like turning it up to 11 a little bit. Like, what sort of stuff did you guys do to prepare as pilots for this? Like, this is just, I mean, it's so big. To me, it just seems like super daunting.
Yeah, like I felt intimidated by this trip, but what's interesting is, and going on this for my first time with in sort of guiding people, but the reality is that the level of preparation, I think, really started with the people, and this is why aviation is just so awesome. Is really the people that make the trip, and then we'll talk about sort of like the pilot aspects of it. But what we did before we left on this trip, we sort of had a little planning dinner. And what was really cool is that everyone got to know each other on this trip before the trip actually started. And if you ever try to get a group together, or if you've been up to Oshkosh and hung out at the campgrounds, this is sort of what it's like. You all, like, people start to know each other, get to know each other, laugh with each other. And that's like, any diehard really, says that, hey, the magic at Oshkosh is like hanging out in the campground or with people after the show or the day. And that's exactly like what made this trip special. And honestly, the best way that we could prepare. People were sharing how they were feeling. We could address any concerns. We could sort of communicate to the group saying, hey, there's like a real survival element that we have to be aware of. So let's get ready and prepare for that. Let's make sure that, in a group setting, we'll make sure everyone's iPad's up to date, the planes are good. And it was just like everyone sort of contributed to these thoughts, even to flying from Chicago or Milwaukee to Alaska and back. You have to think about like oil changes and things like that, because it's a long way. Normally we just fly somewhere for lunch and come back, and you don't have to think about an oil change. But all these little things that you put together is just a nice culmination of piloting skills. Developing a route for flight is unbelievably powerful. Somebody actually asked me like what my pilot bag looked like and the stuff that I brought with. And granted that the Cirrus is extremely capable, so it has a lot of like information. Everything that ForeFlight has is sort of embedded in the Cirrus platform, or the Perspective Plus avionics. So it was funny. I literally just would show my phone. I'm like, that's the only thing. I didn't even bring an iPad, so it was just my phone that I brought in order to fly it all the way up there and back. And it's just a really cool testament to see a lot of the innovation in aviation, being able to fly to Alaska VFR and file all your VFR flight plans and cross a border with literally your phone. It's like, when you think about that, that is unbelievably awesome. And if that's just happened over the last couple of years, think about the next couple of years and how cool aviation is going to be and all the innovation that's going to happen. So it was one of those pinch me moments and trips.
And I was just going to add, that video just ended. That video was like just a few minutes long as you were talking, and then like in just those few minutes, like as I scrub, like look at like how. Like, if we just, like, scrub through, like, look how dramatic those few minutes were.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's tracking everyone else. I was like, wait a minute, are you in the Caribbean now? Like, what? Like,
right.
It's like, that's like an epic amount of change, which is just, like, you don't get flying like that at a lot of places other than Alaska, I'm guessing.
You're right. Like, and that's the thing, is that it was kind of funny, as we started to sit and think about what flying in Alaska was all about. Like there was an unbelievable amount of change, and no one really knew what to expect. On our way out there, every flight just kept getting cooler and cooler and cooler, and it was literally one of those, like, this was the coolest flight I did. Then we get gas, and they're like, no, this was awesome. This was awesome. And it literally for like 2 days straight, it was like that. And I was so grateful for that being able to share that with the people. And when finally on the way, where we filmed all those videos of the glaciers, it was really a epic point where I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievably unique. You can only experience this from an airplane. And when you see, like, you're right, the change of terrain and how cool that looks, every few minutes it was there was a turn around the corner.
Is this the same? Because I'm guessing this is earlier in the trip as you guys are like headed.
Yeah,
headed
so
out?
that was in Bozeman, Montana, and it was really fun. We flew one day from Chicago to Bozeman, Montana, and this is our first sort of overnight. And we broke the trip up. If anybody's ever considering going on a nice trip like this, you space it out, enjoy, a way to make it more comfortable and make sure that you're like, hey, not get too fatigued in an airplane. That's
Sure.
10 days of 50 hours of flying, round trip. That's one of the real ways to sort of make it comfortable is spend 2 days at a particular location. That way you have sort of a rest day, a recovery day. You can unpack at the hotel, and sort of enjoy flying stories. But this was in Bozeman, Montana, and we flew around Yellowstone and the Grand Teton Mountains, and it was just really amazing to see all these planes put together and really see like this little community on the ramp of airplanes. But like I said, the people were the thing that made the magic around it, and just the cool planes behind it and the stories were just unbelievably awesome.
And also, like, because we haven't even talked about your profession. Like, we just kind of jumped into the epic trip, but like, like bright. Like, man, you guys are painting those planes bright, some bright colors now.
Yeah, this was so the planes. So what I did, all things, sort of while I was doing all this flying and flight instruction, I had a lot of customers when we started to teach under this way. Hey, how do you use aviation and go places and achieve what achieve your desired result? How do you achieve this sense of adventure and creativity and spontaneity? That's the thing that we really were trying to do. And like, if we can do that, learning to fly and getting your license is a byproduct of learning all that. Sure. And a lot of customers that I started to have had Cirruses, and people were started to come over to me and start to ask, hey, what should I do this in? And like, I'm thinking about getting a plane, and I'm like, hey, I've done this. I've traveled around in a Cirrus. I really think this is an awesome platform. And customers here in Chicago started buying and ordering Cirruses. And then finally one day Cirrus came up and said, hey, like, would you like to join in a sales role for Cirrus here in Chicago? You'll cover Illinois and Wisconsin. And I was like, I've never sold anything in my life. I'm not your guy. And then after some more convincing and talking and thinking it over, I'm like, okay, if there's one company that I would love to go work for, it's Cirrus, the Google of airplanes, if you will. And it's rewarded with some unbelievably incredible experiences like that Alaska trip. That green and yellow airplane that you saw was another kind of bucket list pinch me trip. That is at a grass airport in Tuscany, Italy, and got to fly.
Wait, what?
Brand new. Yes.
I just assumed that was like another Alaska trip photo, because like you got the mountains in the background, and that, anyway, n-numbered planes. You had your n-numbered planes over in Italy. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. This was an unbelievable trip. So one of the things that I have always believed in, and Cirrus does as well, is like, get out and use your plane and go places and explore and push yourself. And I like the confidence ring, expand it. Let's grow you as a pilot and match, the capability, your pilot capability with the airplane. And let's do some pretty epic things. And this Alaska trip was an example of it that Cirrus sort of put together, and we it was the guide on the trip to be able to take it, take this group to Alaska and back. And this particular trip that in this picture, it's taken in Tuscany, Italy, at a grass airport at a hotel. And this is where Cirrus tries to drive creativity and have amazing experiences. So this was 2018. We all airlined to Paris, picked up a bunch of 5 rental SR-22 turbos, and we flew VFR all over Europe. And this is after a couple days of flying around. We landed in Tuscany, Italy, and spent 2 days at an awesome hotel and had a great time. So the funny fact is, one day I got a phone call. My phone started to ring while we landed at a grass airport in rural Hungary, and somebody from Port Washington, Wisconsin, which is not too far from where you're at, Ryan.
Right.
That in the Milwaukee area, they called up and they had a Cirrus and they said, "Hey, Al, like I think I know the answer to this question, but I just need to hear it from you. You know, so the Cirrus cannot land in grass, right?" And I'm like, "Well, funny enough, I'm with literally one of your neighbors. I'm talking to you in rural Hungary." And we just landed a Cirrus on a 2,600-foot grass airport at this hotel. And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So, like, where you're trying to go to, a little grass airport in Wisconsin, I can tell you that a grass airport in Wisconsin is on a much different, better, more cool level than a grass airport in terms of upkeep at a grass airport in Hungary. So you're good to go. And it was just kind of I love those moments where somebody doesn't think something's possible, but you can teach them and show them that it totally is. And that's the thing that gives me a lot of meaning in aviation and what we do. And like you said, expand that confidence ring to do cool things with airplanes.
We were just talking about this similar idea. I've been helping out the National Stole competition this
Awesome.
inaugural season, and actually I'll be in Texas in a couple of weeks, like announcing for them in Gainesville. And
Awesome.
in Louisiana, we're down at Swamp Stole, and they have all the big fat tire bush planes and everything in this little grass strip. It's actually what the crop dusters at the local airport used. And we're doing all this Stole stuff and, you know, Huskies and Carbon Cubs and all that stuff. And then a dude shows up in a Cherokee 140 and was just, I mean, he wasn't winning, but he was like he was competitive. And I was sitting there going like, you know, we don't think about, like, just because it, like, right now, like, the bush plane, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm super into it. Like, the bush plane thing is super in vogue, but we don't realize that a lot of the airplanes that we've been training on this entire time are capable in that, you know, most of us aren't going to be landing on, like, you know, sandbars or, you know,
Yes.
the side of a mountain like Trent Palmer or whatever, right? It's like,
Right.
you could take that capability that you have probably baked in your plane, and as long as you get the proficiency, I think is what you're probably getting at, right? Is like, as long as you get the proficiency to do it, yeah, you don't think of, like, I don't think of blasting up to Hartford. I wouldn't expect to see a Cirrus on 1836 there on the grass, but you could do it. And I think that's part of it. It's like we love the fantasy of the bush plane stuff, but a lot of us are flying stuff that can do, I don't know, what, 80% of the capability based on the airports we have available to us? I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I'm glad you said that, because there's something that I always sort of believed in with airplanes. They can all do really cool things, and they'll surprise you in a way. And you really have to just adopt the mentality of the airplane that you're flying, and it sort of unlocks all this stuff. So, like, to your point, that the Cherokee 140, you know, I just love it. I love hearing a story like that where, hey, you go up to the Stole competition. Cherokee 140 is like a great airplane, and you know, with the right capability, the right proficiency behind it, the right confidence, and that person really understanding what that airplane can do and respects that. Like, no wonder, you know, like that's awesome to show up and blow it out of the water at the Stole competition. That must have been the hit of the show.
It was definitely the surprise of the show, for sure. It was like, oh, look at this guy.
Yeah. MVP.
Okay, so yeah, right. I want to, and everyone in the chat, if you have, I mean, we should probably talk a little bit more about Cirrus stuff, because we have like a Cirrus expert on the show, and I'm surprised that Just Plain Silly hasn't shown up to like make jokes about his Cirrus with you on the show. But so if you have questions for Al, like, drop them in the chat. We can chat about specific stuff too. Here's kind of a funny one. James says, so when is Cirrus doing a high wing Stole plane? That's fun. I mean, everyone's doing it.
We can start a rumor right now. Like, let's start it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it. So talk to me a little. I mean, for folks who maybe don't know, I mean, this is something that I've not done. I've been so excited about hearing about your epic trips and stuff. that maybe we should have started at the top? Like in terms of Cirrus, like the Cirrus value proposition. If someone's considering an aircraft, like what do you? If someone's shopping, like how are you pitching that to them?
Well, I think that's a great question because there's a lot of different angles, and I think when you start to understand, what experience you want to have with aviation, that is and if you really want to go out and travel, and the typical person that comes up and says, hey, I have a cabin in northern Wisconsin, I've have a condo in Florida, and I own a business, and I'm going to go ahead and I'd like to explore this. And the interesting thing is that you can expand this. Like that's Cirrus's, obviously in the business to sell airplanes, but really at the core of what Cirrus does is we want to really try do a couple things. One, we want to help people live differently and live their life in a different, creative, spontaneous, adventurous manner. And you start to do that with familiar comfort, leading edge safety, a lot of technology, modern avionics and platform, and that just so happens to end up being the Cirrus. That's the thing that we make, is the airplane. And that is a big task. This is not like going to a car dealership and saying, hey, I'm going to go out and buy a car. Yep, that's great. You're at the dealership for 3 hours, and then you drive home, and life goes on. And this time you've got heated seats and Bluetooth, as opposed to your previous car that had cloth seats and you had to wear a headset. So it's the core of when we talk about what Cirrus does and the product is we sit there and try to figure out, okay, how do we weave this in and get everybody on board? So meaning your family, if you have a company and employees, and let's develop that creativity. You might decide that you need to go, to your cabin or visit a customer or location, but that stuff's easy. But let's go on the fringe and figure out, okay, why not the Bahamas? Why not Alaska? Why not to Europe? And do some things like that. Let's have these, enrich your life with these experiences. And at the end of the day, you could do that with any airplane. So I truly believe in moving aviation forward. And whether somebody buys a Cirrus or not, or orders one, that's great. But ultimately, the whole brand sort of represents, let's do cool things with aviation. Let's move the industry forward. And that's the thing that really resonates. So, if there's a certain price point and you sit in Oshkosh at the EAA air show and you answer question after question for 10 days straight, standing in the sun and all that, right. That's really a lot of fun. And you start to talk to people and people find the plane very surprising. So, for example, one of the questions that people always come up to me and say, how much fuel does this hold? This SR. And I could say 92 gallons, but that doesn't really mean anything, right?
Right.
So it's really like, hey, from Chicago, I can go nonstop to Orlando, Florida. And that's the thing that really surprises people when you start talking about the airplane, and showing what it could do for them. And that's where it really gets exciting, because then, it typically can do way more than people think. And I love helping find reasons to go out and fly and do cool places like Alaska or Bahamas or wherever it is. So that's a fun creativity to start building.
Sure. And I think, obviously there's some of the guys in here were saying acknowledging Cirrus takes a lot of crap from a few aviators, but they're really great airplanes. I think, some of that just comes from the price point, probably, right, of the aircraft, to get that capability. And you see, I think when you mentioned Oshkosh, I thought you were going to talk about just whoa, right? It's the breadth there is so amazing, right? You've got people who've home built a Flybaby for $3,000, and then on the other side you've got TBMs and all these insane I have a buddy who reached out and he was like, hey, maybe we'll be up at Oshkosh this Friday. I'm gonna be looking at TBMs, and I was like, whoa, you're business is doing great.
Yeah.
But
Right.
so anyway, that like the value prop was there for him, right? Like that type of aircraft fit the mission of what he needed to do for his business, and it made sense. So, who am I to judge?
Yeah, and that's a real thing. And I'll never forget my first Oshkosh. People would come up and they would sit and a brand new SR22 turbo was $900,000. This is 2016, and people would be like, they literally nearly had a heart attack, thinking like, oh my gosh, like, whew, this thing is up there in price. And granted, I will be the first to admit there are majority of people cannot afford a $900,000 airplane. And now the airplanes over an SR22 turbo is pushing 1.2 million dollars. And it's interesting, a lot of people come to me and they think that the SR is the the end plane. It's the shiny thing. It's a thing that you sort of work your way up to. You start with like a used Chevy, Cruze, and then you work up to a new Chevy Cruze, and then you work your way up, and then your sort of retirement car is the brand new pickup truck or something like that. But a lot of people that come to for the first time are new pilots, and this is their first airplane, not their last. And it's a great way. It's a great way to pivot. And the people that do have the financial capability, that see the value, and we build that the price isn't necessarily the most deciding factor. It's quality, safety, experience, how they're going to feel, like they want service, all that stuff. And when you start to actually tour, I love doing this. Somebody has an airplane on order, I'll bring them up to Duluth, Minnesota, where we manufacture the airplanes, and that's our assembly line. And when you start to see all the stuff, the engineering, the intellectual property, the production certificate, the FAA, all the vendors, the people that depend and need to, we need in order to put together an airplane, it is a massive effort. And you start to see like, wow, this is a lot of infrastructure here. There's 1,900 families that depend on this. And and every single person here has a lot of input to make this a go. We can't do it without them. Plus you're getting this awesome airplane. Like there's a lot of support that goes in. So that's usually the moment where people are like, oh man, I get it. This is it's priced the way it is because it needs to be in order to support. And this is a brand new airplane with all the latest technology. And people really value that. And you'd be surprised how many customers, when they see that on our flight home, when I drop them off at home after seeing the factory, they're like, wow, that was really eye-opening. I didn't understand that. And I'm really glad to see that, the people that are putting the airplanes together, that this, we're making an impact. My order, my money is going to great things, a lot of families, and, pushing an industry forward. So it's, goes way beyond just a singular dollar price point. There's a lot of feel good value in it when people are exposed to that, but they also get a lot from the airplane once they take possession of it, delivery, and they start changing and living differently with it.
Oh, there we go. There's something that you said that resonated with me in terms of like seeing it and then understanding the value better. And I wonder if we should just do that. Maybe society needs to do that in general. Like I work in TV film production, like we make TV commercials, and always, right, like it always happens, we'll like submit the bid and everyone's like, that's insane. Like how can you charge $100,000 for a TV commercial? And it's like, well, like I need these 40 people or 30 people or whatever for like a week. Right? And we need to pay them a fair wage, otherwise they're not there the next time that we need them. So we need to like pay them enough to have them be around and do this as a career. And then the same thing, they're kind of like, whatever. Not all of them, but sometimes it happens. And then people show up on set and they see this like army of people and trucks and vans and cameras, and they're like, oh, I get it now. Like, and that's for a shiny thing. It's kind of I don't know, you get more value probably a TV commercial has less longevity than an aircraft does, right? You might get a
Yeah,
season or two out of it, but there's still a business value to it as well. So I don't know. Getting off topic a little bit.
You're no, you're exactly right, and that's the thing that aviation is adjusting. And it's not like there's it's this corporate greed or anything like that. It's literally it's a premium product, just like putting a premium commercial together to showcase your product in the best light. You need the people, you need the expertise, you want it to look good. I remember watching our marketing team do a photo shoot for all these cool pictures, and I always thought, I'm like, okay, well they get somebody from the factory, they get somebody from the office, and they go in there, they dress them up, and they take their iPhone out and they start photographing them. And boy, was I ever wrong. It was exactly what you're talking about. It's a real production, and it produces these results that look good, that feel good. And I'll never forget, it was a 3-day event to try to do this photo shoot. They had props, they had stuff, they had literally semis of stuff to come in. Yeah, I see what you did. I like that. So, but anyway, it's you're right. There is a value to a premium product, and and a lot of capability, and there's a lot of great airplanes out there, this. For a factory new airplane, when you think of other airplanes that roll off the line at different factories and elsewhere, there's and you actually see that up at the factory when it's being put together. You realize, man, there is a lot of value here, and all of a sudden $1 million is pretty cheap.
Right. I mean, I think also the thing that when I walked through AirVenture with my wife, I was like, all right, like there's the plane that I fly. So I have a 172 that I co-own with a bunch of people from 1976 or something. And I was like, oh, like there's a brand new 172. And she's like, oh, how much is that? I'm like, hey, like $500,000. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's like the basic model. So when you put that in perspective too, it's just like an apples to apples thing, I think.
It is.
I wanted to ask, people are asking some questions.
Cool.
Waukesha Pilot's asking, what does SR stand for?
It stands for single reciprocating. So it's a single engine reciprocating. So the very first model, it was sort of the history of Cirrus, like being a Wisconsin guy yourself. It's really cool. The Cirrus was actually founded in Wisconsin, right outside of Baraboo, and there was a family farm the Klattmeyer brothers had, or the Klattmeyer family had, and they would develop airplanes in the bottom of this barn. And in fact, actually last week I was just showing somebody the original barn, and it was kind of cool. I was looking for the longest time. I was looking for a barn in that area where I thought that the original barn was, sort of out just north of Madison, in between Baraboo and Madison, Wisconsin. And I was having trouble finding it. And one day when I was just sort of 6 months into working at Cirrus, Dale Klattmeyer was so nice. He would always come and have lunch with customers up at Duluth. And I remember asking him once, I'm like, hey, Dale, we're flying home to Chicago, and we're flying right over where I think the barn is. Like, I've been trying to find this red barn, and I've been looking all over the place, and I just can't seem to find it. And I think, I don't know if I have the right one or not. Can you verify this on Google Earth with me? And he's like, hey, no wonder why you haven't found the right barn. The original barn was blue. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So he showed me the barn, and it was kind of neat. So we found it and circled it, and it was just, it's have a little sense of nostalgia. It's flying over it. But back in 1994, Cirrus moved up to Duluth, Minnesota, and started development on the SR-20. And that was finally certified in the late 90s, and the first delivery was in 1999. And that was really cool. So SR-20 stands for single engine, or single reciprocating engine, and it had 200 horsepower. So that's what the 20 stood for. So it was an abbreviation for 200 horsepower. And now we've got the SR22, which was sort of the second revision of the SR20. So that has a 310 horsepower engine in it. And now we have the SR22 Turbo, which is a phenomenal airplane. So it's a kind of cool little lineage. And now, right after I joined Cirrus 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, the SF50 came out, and that stands for single fan. So single engine turbo fan engine.
I was gonna say, shouldn't that be the ST single turbine? But SF makes sense too.
So a little thing in the Cirrus history, before they started development on the SR20, there was an airplane. If you Google it, it's called the ST50, and it was a single engine turboprop that has, and you'll start to see that lineage. And like, there's a little, if you compare a Google image of the ST50 and the SF50, you'll see a lot of similarities in there. So it was a single engine turboprop pusher airplane. And you can start to see like, hey, even in the early 90s, this jet or turbine airplane was going to be on the horizon.
And this, I think I've got the right clip. You said this is a shot of the Vision Jet. Is that right?
Yeah, this was flying home, a little time lapse. Took off out of Denver and flew all the way home to Chicago Executive, and that was just it was one of my first flights after finishing up my type training, and it was pretty remarkable. There was a Thunderhead that I saw, and I'm like, man, this would just be cool just to get a time lapse of this Thunderhead. And the anvil was like the most perfectly flat anvil that I've ever seen. And it was stretched for like 250 miles. And I'm like, well, I'm halfway home. Might as well just keep this time lapse going. And it turned out to be a cool little clip that you just played.
So this is the anvil up here is what you were... Yeah, look at that thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty epic.
It was really pretty amazing. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, wait, I didn't have... hang on. I'm, like, showing it to people, and here, this is what we need to do. We need to go... Whoop. Oh, man, what's going on with me tonight? I'm off my game on this, on these videos here.
Doing a
There
great
we
job.
go. There we go. I'm doing too many things at once. This is what I was trying to do. I was trying to show you the anvil right here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Look
Look at that thing.
It stretched forever, and it was like a lot of deviation around weather like that. And this thing was like super flat, and the atmosphere like capped this thing and really stretched it out. And it literally was 250 miles long. It just I thought it was pretty cool to see that and the power behind that storm. And we're flying around right now inside the anvil at the very kind of tip of it, and it just kept going. So it was that was a cool storm. And then right there, like I had a little moment at this part of the video. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stop it. And then I'm like, well, we're almost home. We'll catch a cool sunset, and then, then I was gonna turn it off. And then I'm like, well, we're almost here, so we might as well just get the landing. So just doing weird stuff with the phone up at altitude.
No, you gotta do it. I mean, it's like, this is, I mean, even if you're not in the Vision Jet, like, it's still like it's still magic.
It is, and it's like you gotta have fun with it. And those are I love. My favorite thing is time lapses at the moment. To like get and capture. They're easy. The best thing is you can text them, and they look great via text. So instead of like this 5-minute video that takes forever to send or doesn't send, like, a cool way to woo friends or whatnot is to text over a time lapse. That's my new thing at the moment.
Yeah, what'd you do today?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Before we wrap up the show with a game, we're gonna play a game, but I wanted to just talk, wanted to recap like the thing you talked about at the beginning, right? In terms of like just like this like stretching of people's legs, this idea of like really using airplanes for what they're for. Because you're still an instructor, like you're still instructing as you sell, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would say that. I would say that like being rather than the guy that teaches you how to like actually land a plane, I help people with that, or some of our customers. But like now, the way I look at what I do is try to teach people how to own an airplane and actually like you said, stretch and expand their horizons.
So if you had one piece of advice for folks about how to do that, like what would it be? Like what's the what's the Al Waterloo like trademark? Like here's how to like be a good, I don't know, pilot.
I found I remember I was on a flight lesson, and I had booked, it was Thursday, a flight lesson from Chicago to St. Louis with a student. And on Thursday I got a phone call and the guy canceled the lesson. And I was like, "Hey, why are we canceling? Like, you know, it's Thursday, this thing's on Saturday, and we just don't know what's going to happen between now and then." And the guy said, he's like, "Well, I'm looking at the forecast, and it's scheduled to be thunderstorms. And so therefore, we should just cancel. That's a good decision." And I said, "Okay, well, you know, are you proud of that decision?" He's like, "Well, no, it's just the right thing to do." And I'm like, "Well, you know, like if we're going to cancel a flight, let's be proud of that decision." And the way to do that, and I'd never forget this, like from there on out, in any type of teaching, I said, "Hey, rather than look for reasons not to fly, let's assume that we are going to fly, and let's verify that we can fly, versus go in with the thought that we're not going to fly, and then all of a sudden we look at a forecast and see the word thunderstorm or rain or clouds or whatever, and then we cancel. We just verify, like, yep, that's it. So if we make a simple mind shift to say that, hey, we are going to fly, and when we do our weather briefing and look at all the risks in the flight, let's verify for reasons that we can fly. You know, you'll fly so many more flights, and you won't get sort of mad or angry at yourself if you do have to cancel a flight, because when you do, you'll know exactly why you do, and you'll feel good about that decision. And then you'll go about the day, and you don't have to cancel a trip. You can always complete a trip. You might not be able to do it in a particular flight, so you know, play with that. So simple little mind shift tweaks like that are super important in my humble opinion.
I will say that it's like you read we have like a local, we call it the Sky Fam chat. It's like a local little Facebook group of Milwaukee pilots, and I won't say names because I don't want to like out anyone or make them feel bad, but we definitely had that we have a spot landing competition happening this weekend, and one of the pilots said, "Oh, like I think I'm gonna cancel me being in the spot landing competition because I looked at the forecast." This is 2 or 3 days ago, so it's like Monday, so it's like almost a full week away. And he's like, there's gonna be a crosswind, and I think I'm out. And like, as if on cue, like all of the instructors in the chat were like, "It's 5 days, 6 days away, and you're talking about crosswinds? Like, what are you like? Wait, just wait. It's gonna change, right? Like, like let's just chill out a little bit." So no, that's really good. I like that idea of like, the thing you said. Something I want to get the quote right. You were talking about like being proud of canceling the flight. Like, are we going to be proud that we did?
Yeah. Are you proud that you canceled the flight? And you know, you rather than just say, understand, be able to look somebody in the eye, the person that you're flying with, and say, "Hey, we are canceling the flight. We're not going to do this flight right now. It might be later. It might be say, hey, let's just scrap the whole thing." You know, like, here's the reason why. Pinpoint and bracket exactly why. Is it you, the pilot? Is it the plane? Is it truly the weather? Is it capability? Whatever it is, if you can identify that, then you can look with confidence deep into somebody's eye and say, "Hey, we're not going today because of this, and here's why I feel good about it." And like that, all of a sudden, I've seen so many people cancel their flight, and then they get angry at themselves because like it's either prematurely canceled or like actually that's how Cirrus got its name, believe it or not. Is the Clapmeyer brothers would get weather briefings. They originally were from DeKalb,
Okay.
And on driving up to their summer family home in Baraboo, near Baraboo, Wisconsin, they had a bunch of different airplanes themselves. So they had like a Cessna 140, a few other things, and they would try to get a weather briefing from the briefer. And they'd call up 1-800-WX-BRIEF. That's how you got your briefings, back then. And they'd get the briefing. And at the end of the briefing, it was like flight not recommended, VFR flight not recommended. Well, they would, not fly. They'd drive their car up. And as they're driving from Chicago, to Calb, Illinois to Wisconsin, they'd look up and the weather was great. And all they saw were cirrus clouds. And when you're a pilot and you see cirrus clouds, it's the best kind of flying there is. So that's how Cirrus got its name, because they would drive sort of angry at themselves for not flying, because they weren't proud of why they canceled the flight. And they'd look up and they see cirrus clouds, and they said, okay, let's build an airplane that's capable and all that. So it was really fun. So be proud of the flight that you do have to cancel. Look somebody in the eye and feel really great about the reason why you're not going. Other than that, make sure that you assume that you will fly, because it's awesome to fly, and and look for reasons to verify that you can fly. And I can guarantee you to take more flights that way, and feel less cancellations. And when you do cancel, you'll feel really good about it.
Right. Yeah. And then separately, if you're doing all that homework, you're more likely to learn. I'm not an instructor, but it feels like if the more homework you do in trying to validate that decision, the better you're going to feel about it. And separately, the more you're going to learn, so that you don't do the wrong thing and fly when you shouldn't, right? Like that exercise gets you there in a more interesting way.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I like that.
Just Plain Silly, by the way, did show up in the chat. He said, did somebody say Cirrus? I'm here at the end. Oh, he said, I heard Cirrus, and he's here. Of course, I think it's a Cirrus in his logo. Is like a guy riding a Cirrus, like a bucking bull with like the parachute deployed. Nice. It's a satire. What? Oh, he said the worst thing about being a Cirrus pilot is texting people with voice to text and constantly sending, I have a serious flight. I don't have serious flights.
Absolutely. If you have an Apple Watch and you try to like text and respond like that, you just sort of like, yeah, that's a given that it's going to be like serious with like, yes, I am serious about that. And like that's the serious that goes through, and it's just real Siri struggles, that's for sure.
Wait, did you say Siri struggles? Siri, the watch Siri struggles.
Yeah,
because
yes.
Oh, you just translated.
Now
okay,
it's like this is just getting awesome.
No, yeah, for sure. So before we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of your time tonight, we always play a game on the show if you're up for it. It's called Short Final. It's just it's a minute on the clock, and it's I made a logo for it. It's a minute on the clock. I'll just ask you some like quick answer questions about your flying. It's not like there's no points. You've already won.
Is there a lightning round?
This is kind of the lightning round.
This is the lightning. Okay, cool. This is like super. I feel the pressure. It's awesome.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if the questions I ask are good. All right, we'll get a little music on. We'll get our timer going. Al Waterloo, Short Final. First, are you a north up or track up person?
Track up.
Interesting. It's been a big debate. Okay, what about favorite airport you've ever landed at?
Santa Barbara, California.
What about favorite passenger you've ever had?
Let's say my wife.
That's the safe answer.
Yes.
You fly Cirrus Aircraft. I want to know, what's the plural of Cirrus? No one knows.
Let's go Cirri. I don't even know, but I say Cirri, yes.
Okay, fair enough. What about what's the number one thing that people don't like the most underrated thing about a Cirrus people don't think about?
The cup holders.
It's cup holders.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 seconds. What's your favorite warbird?
P-51 Mustang.
Dude, you killed this. No, most of the time we get like 2 questions in and people don't know what to do, and then we just like continue to talk. You like got like what's that, like 5 or 6? A lot. There's a lot. You answered a lot of questions. It was really good.
You fired them off so good. So that was awesome.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Thanks for thanks for helping me make it about me again.
So good. So good.
Just Plain Silly says he agrees with you on everything. Cirai, track up. And he said also the air conditioning is nice.
Air conditioning is a pretty solid thing. I'll say some people don't know that air conditioning in an airplane is a safety feature just as much as a comfort feature.
Oh, hit me with the elevator pitch on that, sales guy.
That is so like you end up. So have you ever like either tried to like open the window and you're like on a hot day and you like run up and you're like, I need to hustle through my checklist to get airborne to get airflow going. The air conditioning like slows it down and allows you to be comfortable the entire time. So if you're physically comfortable, you could be safe, have a clear mind, and make good decisions.
I was joking, but you know what? You caught me because I am notorious in my YouTube videos. I will admit it. Like, there's so many videos where in the summer I pull out onto the runway and I do that last little check of everything before I go full throttle, and then I'm like, ah, crap! Like both the windows are open.
Yes.
Because I'm dying in here.
Yep.
Well, fine.
It's totally the thing. Like, it's a weird thing about air conditioning. Use it in the winter too. Those hot, like those really clear, bright, sunny days. It gets hot inside the plane, believe it or not. So anyway, big fan of AC.
Well, that sounds really cool. I think for our 1970s 172, maybe we need to get one of those things that blows air over ice.
Yes, that'd be awesome.
It would be awesome. Okay, in that weird place, it's probably time to sign off tonight. But Al, dude, I am so excited to have gotten to know you tonight, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat about all your adventures and everything you're doing. I hope if you're ever in like Timmerman, shoot me a text or whatever. I'll buy you coffee or whatever. I can't buy you a beer because you're probably flying in and out, but.
Well, if anyone's around tomorrow, legitimately, 2 p.m. at the Waukesha Airport, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that Alaska trip and some more of the flight planning details and all that. So anybody from the Milwaukee area that's on tonight, come on over to the Waukesha Airport, the Spring City hangar, and we're going to be talking about the Alaska trip a little bit more. So it'd be fun. So that'd be a great thing. But I certainly would love to link up with you and take you for a flight as a thank you,
dude. I've never been in a Cirrus before. It's like one of those things. I'm afraid of it. I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's like real deal plane. So that would be awesome. And I played hooky from work today, flying. So I don't know if I can play hooky 2 days in a row to come see at Waukesha tomorrow. But I don't know. We'll see. I know the boss.
Think about it. Yes. Well, hope to see you there, but we'll link up for sure.
Dude, that would be rad.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, everybody else on the stream, I just want to say thanks for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday night. It is so cool, again, always to have you guys in the chat. Don't forget, again, share the video, like, subscribe, shoot us comments. How am I doing? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I gotta know. What's your favorite thing about flying this week? Put that in the doobly-doo thing down below. Make sure to check out all of Al's Instagram. We didn't even talk about his YouTube channel. He's got a YouTube channel that you can learn a lot more about what he's doing over at Cirrus and just the kind of cool adventure flying that he does with that stuff. So, yeah. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Make sure you tune in next week. I think we're going to be talking, as I was talking smack about Stoll a little bit, we're going to be, I think, talking Stoll next week. we'll get that all figured out. But yeah, Al, I'll put you on screen again, dude. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you, and I have a much appreciation how much time and effort it takes to put on productions like these. So there's a real mad respect that I have for you doing this type of thing. It's a lot of fun, and you do an awesome job at it. So thanks for having me tonight.
Dude, thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it. Everybody else, we'll see you next week on SuperAero Live.